This video is going to cover the remaining Chapter 3 homework problems that we did not cover in class, starting with number 16, looking at predetermined overhead rate and applied overhead. This problem gives us our estimated overhead of $85,000, actual overhead of $88,750, and actual hours of 8,400. It's also telling us at the end of the year overhead was underapplied by $4,750. It's asking us to calculate the predetermined overhead rate. Predetermined overhead rate times our actual hours equals our overhead applied. In this case, we know our actual hours and we can calculate our overhead applied to back into our predetermined overhead rate. So our overhead that was applied is going to equal the actual overhead of $88,750 minus our overhead under applied of $4,750. Therefore, it is equal to $84,000. Now, how I calculated that is because we know that our actual overhead was $88,750. It's telling us that we under-applied overhead, so it would be the difference between these two is the overhead that we actually applied. Now we go back to this formula and rearrange it. So our predetermined overhead rate is going to equal our overhead applied divided by actual hours. Therefore, it's going to equal 84,000 divided by 8,400, which is 84,000 divided by our actual hours, giving us a rate of $10 per hour. So that's our predetermined overhead rate. The second part of the question asks us how much overhead should be applied to a job that was completed in 3 direct labor hours. Here we would take our overhead rate of $10 times the 3 labor hours. So it would be $30 overhead applied for 3 direct labor hours of work. Okay, let's look at number 19. Process costing using the FIFO method. So we're giving information about the beginning, current, and ending work in process in number of units and production costs. This is telling us they use the FIFO method for computing equivalent units and assigning the product costs. This information is for the month of April. So how many bags of popular snacks were completed in April? So we start with step 1, the calculation of units completed. So it's going to be our beginning units plus our units started less our ending units. This gives us the units completed during the period. So it would be our beginning units of 3,000. And again, we're not using equivalent units yet. We're using actual units for the first step. The units that were started was 20,000 and ending inventory is 5,000. So we add those up and we get units completed during the period of 18,000. And because this is FIFO, we assume that the beginning units are already completed and they were started in a previous period. So we need to calculate how many units were started and completed during the period. Okay, so this is the answer to part A. And for part B, we need the started and completed during the period. So it's going to be the units completed from above, and we're going to subtract the beginning inventory to get our units started and completed during the period. So 18,000 from here, and we're going to subtract our beginning inventory of 3,000 which gives us units started and completed during the period of 15,000. And this is your Part B answer. Okay, let's look at number 21. Again, here's the cost of operations for April. It's the same information that we just saw in number 19, except this is asking us for the equivalent units that they completed during April, and then to calculate the cost of the ending work in process. So we know from number 19 that the company started and completed 15,000 bags. So they started and completed 15,000 units, which is what we calculated here. Okay? So that's going to be our starting point as we go on to step 2, since we calculated step 1 in problem number 19. Now, we use this information to calculate our equivalent units. So step 2, which is answer to part A, is going to start with our beginning WIP, which is going to be our 3,000 units times 90%. We're 10% complete, so that means that we have to finish 90% of that 3,000. So we're going to take 3,000 times 90%. And then we know that we started and completed at 100%, 15,000 units. And our ending WIP is our 5,000 units times the 85% that we completed during the period. So 5,000 times 85%. Okay? So that gives us total equivalent units of 21,950. Equivalent units completed during April. Okay. Step 3 is calculate cost per equivalent unit. Okay. So here we're going to look at the costs for the current period. We assume that the beginning costs were already, the beginning inventory is automatically already moving to finished goods. So we don't look at this as part of the calculation of equivalent units. Okay, remember we exclude our beginning inventory. So it's going to be our equivalent units, our total production costs for the period, which is the 7,240 divided by our equivalent units, which is 21,950. So our cost per equivalent unit is equal to $3.20. And then finally, step 4 is to calculate our costs. Here they're asking for the costs of ending work in process inventory. So first we need to understand our ending WIP, which is equal to the 5,000 times 85%. 5,000 times 85%. That's what's remaining in ending inventory. So times 85%. And then we're going to multiply by cost per equivalent unit, which is 320, giving us, giving us a cost of ending WIP of 13,600. Okay? And that's the answer to part B. Now let's look at number 29. So this company adds overhead costs to cabinetry projects at the rate of $7.75 per direct labor hour. The company accumulates overhead costs in separate manufacturing overhead account and uses normal costing to assign overhead. The following data provides details excuse me, of the company's activity and balances during the last half of the year. So we can see here that we have direct materials, work in process, finished goods, and then July 1st is the beginning and December 31st is ending. And then we have direct materials purchased and direct labor costs of $270,000. I've taken the liberty to go ahead and prepare some T accounts here for us to look at. So we have raw materials, and you can see that I've color-coded beginning and ending, work in process, beginning and ending, and finished goods, beginning and ending. So let's go back to the problem. It's asking us to calculate the cost of direct materials used during the period. So in order to do that, we would look at our raw materials account. We know that we have beginning and ending inventory, and based on the information, we also know that we purchased $155,000. So here we purchased $155,000. I'll just change the color of that. And we're trying to figure out how much direct materials we used. Okay, so we're trying to solve for this. In order to do so, we know that these need to equal. So we're going to take our beginning plus what we purchased minus our ending. And that is $153,500. That's the direct materials that we used. That being said, we can go over to our work in process. So again, we have our beginning and ending. What goes into work in process? Well, the direct materials, labor, which in this case is $270, and then overhead. We know that they apply overhead at $7.75 per direct labor hour. We also know that direct labor costs are $15 per hour, or $270,000. That means that the direct labor hours for this period was $270,000 divided by $15. So 18,000 hours. Okay? So we take our 18,000 hours times $7.75 per hour to calculate our overhead. Now we need to calculate the cost of goods manufactured that's going to move over to finished goods. So we take our beginning inventory plus our direct materials, direct labor, and overhead minus our ending inventory, giving us cost of goods manufactured of $563,500. And then we know that this moves over to finished goods. Okay. And now we need to figure out our cost of goods sold. In order to do that, we would take our beginning plus cost of goods manufactured minus our ending. And our cost of goods sold would be $564,650. So let's go back to what it's asking us. Calculate the direct materials used during the period. That's going to be this here. Calculate the cost of goods manufactured during the period. That's going to be this here. And then at the end of December, Curtis found out that it had actually incurred overhead costs of $145,000. If the company adjusts over or under applied overhead to the cost of goods sold at the end of the year, what is the company's cost of goods sold after adjustment? So here, we would look at the cost of goods sold, which is the $564,650. Then we know that its over or underapplied will be closed to the cost of goods sold at the end of the year. Therefore, the manufacturing overhead, we're going to create a separate T account. Okay, sorry, let me just format this for you guys. Okay, so this is going to be our actual, and this is applied. So our actual overhead was $139,500, and it was $145,000 per Part C, and we applied 139,500 as we calculated above. So that means that we under applied 5,500 in overhead because the actual is 145 and we only applied 139,500. Therefore, we would adjust our cost of goods sold for the 5,500, meaning that we need to increase our cost of goods sold for an ending balance of 570,150. Okay? Now let's look at number 34 finally. So again, they're giving us some information for the mixing department for the month of March. Beginning, work during, ending. The percentages completed, the units, and production costs. So this is a comprehensive FIFO method. How many units were completed, the equivalent units per cost, cost and ending WIP, and then the cost of goods sold that will be transferred. So let's go back to the various steps that we need to use. So step 1, calculate units completed. Okay, so we're going to take our beginning, add started, less ending for units completed, right? Okay, so our beginning, and here we're not doing equivalent units yet, so it's going to be beginning plus started during the period minus the ending is units completed of 95,000. Now because we're using the FIFO method, we have to exclude the beginning units. So less beginning units gives us our started and completed during the period. Okay, so it's 90,000. Okay. Now we have to calculate equivalent units. This is step 1, sorry. Okay. So in order to calculate the equivalent units, we are going to look at our beginning inventory, beginning WIP, started and completed, and ending WIP. Okay, so this is going to be our 5,000 times the 20,000 that we still need to complete, right? So 5,000 times 20%. I meant 20%, sorry about that. Started and completed from here, and then our ending WIP is going to be the 10,000 times the 40% that we completed during this period. So 10,000 times 40%. Now we add these, and we get equivalent units of 95,000. Okay. Step 3, calculate equivalent unit cost. Calculate the cost per equivalent unit. So now we need to figure out our current period costs, which is the 118,750, because remember, we already know that the 60,000 is going over. We do not include beginning costs. And then our equivalent units is the 95,000 from above, and our cost per equivalent unit is the cost divided by the units, which is $12.50 per unit. And then finally, step 4, calculate production costs. Okay, so first we're going to calculate our ending WIP, which is going to be the 10,000 units times 40% complete. Okay, so that's 4,000. 10,000 times 40%. And then our cost per equivalent unit equals $12.50. Therefore, our cost of ending WIP equals 4,000 times 1250 is $50,000. Then it's also asking us to calculate the cost of goods manufactured. That's going to move to finished goods. Okay. So we're going to include our beginning WIP, costs, which is the 60,000 that we talked about, we know is automatically moving, right? Then we're going to add the cost to finish our beginning WIP. So this is where we take our 5,000 units times 20% that we need to finish times our cost per equivalent unit. Okay, so our beginning WIP is 5,000 times 20%. That's what we need to finish still. Then we're going to add the cost for started and completed. So that is going to be our 90,000 times our $12.50 per unit. Okay. And then finally, we're going to add, oh, I'm sorry, that's it, because our ending WIP is here. So this is our total cost of goods manufactured that will move to finished goods of $1,197,500. Okay. Hopefully you have found this video helpful. I will be posting the remaining problems for Chapter 4 as well. Thank you.